Welcome to Monet Cafe. I am very happy to bring you this tutorial on painting a duckling in soft pastel on unsanded paper. Yes, it can be done. And if you haven't joined the Monet Cafe family here on YouTube, I hope you'll subscribe. Now, this lesson was really to prove and answer a lot of questions people have had about soft pastel painting on unsanded surfaces. I know we talk a lot about sanded surfaces with pastel painting, but we really can accomplish a lot on these unsanded surfaces, and they're a lot less expensive, which is really good for starting out for beginners. Now, just so you know, the full real-time version of this tutorial, it will be in parts because it was a longer painting with so much detail, but the full version with more commentary will be on my Patreon page. But don't worry, Monet Cafe, you'll get plenty of content here. So I'm a little partial to the content of this subject matter of this painting. Prior to the flooding of our home, I'm sharing this here in part one, we had a beautiful pond in our backyard, and I used to love raising baby ducklings. This is a picture of one of my ducks. And we like to raise them and then give them their first swim in our pool from the protection of the pool screen. Then we would release them to our pond. These were Indian runner ducks. I love them so much. My husband even built this beautiful duck house for them floating on our pond. And my dog Jackson had a special fun relationship with one of our ducks. Even though I think the duck was just running Jackson off, they still had fun. So, you know, again, this was prior to the flooding of our home. I haven't talked about this in a while, but it was a really traumatic event in our lives. And now we live sort of in a temporary situation where I can't have ducks yet, but maybe one day. All right, just so you know, the duck sketch, I have just started something. It's a site called Ko-fi, ko-fi.com. How appropriate, right? For Monet Cafe Coffee. And this site is cool because it allows you to support this channel, give a little tip if you would like, and also for me to provide some extras like sketches, as in this case, where you could purchase this little ducky sketch, not the original photo like it's showing here, or the original painting, but this particular sketch for $2. So if you'd like the sketch to start out with rather than sketching it yourself, then you can purchase it here. Now let's go over the supplies. I tried to keep it simple here. You know we're going to be talking about the unsanded paper. I used Canson Mitons, it's a French word, and you can buy this in sheets or in pads. I have a Canson Mitons 9x12 gray tone pad that you can see on the dickblick.com site here. It was like around $9. I'm also using the Sennelier half stick set of 40. I love Sennelier pastels. Now this is a really good quality pastel. Sennelier makes an awesome soft pastel. So don't be alarmed at the price of like almost $63 for these 40 half sticks. They are so worth it. But in the video, I'll be showing the individual pastels, and fortunately on the Dick Blick site, I'll have links to all these products in the description of this video. You can most likely kind of look at the pastels I'm using and maybe just pick and choose the ones you want, because you can go on the Dick Blick site and look at all of the colors from this 40 set and maybe just choose a few that you need. You might already have some colors that you can use. I'm always trying to save you guys money. All right, so I'm speeding up the sketch. This is not a drawing tutorial in this particular video, so I want you guys to get right to painting, and that's why I'm providing the $2 sketch on my Ko-fi site if you'd like that to kind of jumpstart your painting process. However, I always recommend get good at sketching. For the sketch, I used a little piece of willow charcoal. You can kind of see it in my hand there. Willow charcoal is awesome because it's kind of the same consistency as pastels. It's not the same as using a pencil. Probably wouldn't even show up on this gray tones paper. So once you get your sketch in, you're ready to get started. I love the fact that I used one set of pastels. You will see how I get some fine details later with two other products. Some Prismacolor new pastels, they're a little bit harder pastels to get some of the little wispy feathers. And I also used some pastel pencils, I think just one, to get more details in the eye of the little ducky. That was kind of a little bit of fine detail there. So now at this point in part one of this duckling tutorial, I will be providing Monet Cafe with a little bit of a speed version. Not much. I never like to speed it up so much that you can't follow, with some music and no more commentary. You can watch and follow along, and it's all free. That's awesome. And for my patrons, you're going to get some more commentary and real time. All right, patrons, this is for your eyes only, the Patreon only content. You're going to see me choosing the pastels. Every bit of this will be real time from here forward. Now, you also get some extra content, a little bit of behind the scenes info. I was literally working from my little kitchen bar area. My house is pretty little, so sometimes I want to get out of my little studio and just work from a different place. And so I moved and I brought my iPad and just decided to work on, like I said, this gray unsanded paper. I really want to prove that you can get decent results, and sometimes results you might be really pleased with, on unsanded paper. I brag on sanded papers all the time, but I think what happens is the more you work on your art and practice, the better you will get on unsanded papers. They're a bit less forgiving. You need to have more efficiency of stroke, I call it. You don't want a lot of wasted strokes, and you don't want a lot of hard pressure. You want to keep a light touch. I'm keeping a really light touch here. I know that my background is going to be not the focal point. The ducky is the focal point. I know that it's going to have the most detail, and specifically the head and the eye. And so I'm keeping my colors in the water more muted. You'll be able right here to see the colors that I'm grabbing from this 40 half stick set. And like I said before, you can probably, I've kept them in order. I try not to get them out of order when I keep them in a set like this. And from the order that they're in, you may be able to see the colors that you may already have close enough to do this tutorial, and you might see some that you need, and you can get on the Dick Blick website and be able to see the colors that I'm choosing, because they give you all of the colors in this 40 set. So I hope that helps you guys. But this right now is going to look a little blocky and not real blended as compared to the final painting like I shared at the beginning of this video. And that's okay. We're not going to even worry about that. We're just laying down colors and values right now. And then we're going to use a little blending technique to subdue it, to make it look like water. And there's all these little tricks. Well, not all these little tricks. There's a couple little tricks you can do to give the illusion. It's all an illusion. That's all this is. It's not magic, and it's not hard. It's just little techniques that you can use to give the illusion of water, and also of reflection and of refraction that happens with things are underneath the water. And I find that the more that we examine nature, look at how things really are, versus, I always say what my one art teacher in college had. I had one real art teacher in college. I majored in graphic design. I didn't get a lot of art instruction, but I had a couple of classes, and this one art teacher really hit home for me. She drilled, draw or paint what you see, not what you think you see. We often think a reflection is supposed to look this way, or water is supposed to look that way. And if we just start breaking things down into their shapes, their values, and their colors, and learning, like I said, these little techniques, we can create that illusion ourselves. It's not all that hard. It can be daunting when we first get started. We can feel like, oh, I'm so frustrated, this didn't come out the way that I want. But mostly that is because we are learning about the medium. How does this behave? You know, watercolor artists who come to pastels have challenges. Pastel artists who go to watercolor have challenges, because we have to learn how that medium behaves. And then we also have to learn just the rules of putting a three-dimensional world on a two-dimensional surface. But like I often say and like to say, if you have a passion, if you're just drawn, no pun intended, to art and to painting and drawing, you most likely have a gift, something that our Creator has given you that just makes that something you love. And while some people have a natural gift and they just instantly, like a duck to water, that was a pun intended, just seem to get it, they may have something that they just see it more quickly or understand it more quickly. But if you have that desire, you can learn this. I think I'm a good teacher for this because I had the desire before I had the ability, and I had to learn all this the hard way. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about Monet Cafe, is because I see so many people, especially once you've raised your kids, you get a little time for yourselves, and you really want to paint. So, okay, so I'm talking a lot about, just generalities, and I probably need to be talking about what I'm doing here. But you can see exactly what I was saying. I'm laying down blocks of color. You can even see the texture of the paper. When I open the pad of this Canson Mi Tentes paper, I used to say Canson Mi Tientes. I thought it was a Spanish word. It's a French word, and it's Mi Tentes. And I'm just always learning, mostly from my subscribers and my patrons. You guys are teaching me a lot too. But I have learned that when I open up the pad of the Canson papers, they are just automatically on the textured side. So if you prefer working on the smooth side, it's not a lot of difference, but it's the back side of the pad of paper. But this is also proof that the textured side, you can create some detail too. And one of the things I want to share, once again, this is part one. This is going to be about an hour. And one of the things I want to share is that often we give up on unsanded papers a little bit too quickly. We feel like, oh, just not getting any layers. Once again, you may be over layering. You may not have the efficiency of stroke you need. But if you learn a few little blending and brushing off techniques, you can get a little bit more detail and layering than you might initially think that you could. So you can once again see if you, maybe I can zoom in. Let me zoom in a bit and let you see that you can see the texture of the paper showing through here. All right, can you see the, almost like the little dotted areas of texture? And initially that might deter us from even moving forward with this painting. I mean, look at this. It just looks so splotchy and, I don't know, very unfinished looking when you lay the pastels down. So how on earth is this painting going to turn into what I showed at the beginning? Well, that's what's coming your way. And it all takes patience and technique. That's really all it is. And sometimes these Sennelier pastels, I talk about it a lot, how they are a machine finished pastel, so sometimes they have a little tail on them, so you may have to turn them along with any other machine made pastel to get a flat edge, or just kind of sand it off a little bit on another piece of paper to get a flat surface. So if you squint your eyes, you're starting to see the big blocks of shape, and as I shared before, you can access this reference image from the link in this tutorial on YouTube, but always on my Patreon page for my patrons, I'll have a link and an attachment for this actual reference photo. You guys will actually get a copy of the JPEG of the sketch that Monet Cafe, like I said, they only have to pay $2 to get the sketch if they want it. And but you guys will have everything you need to get started. I still recommend learning to sketch yourselves. I have a video I keep wanting to upload. I think it's called, I've got 5 ways to reproduce an image. The number one way I recommend is just to learn to get better at sketching. And it really just comes from practice, patience, and doing it a lot. And a few little strategies. I like to talk about proportional, comparing things proportionately. That's mostly how I sketch. If you noticed when I sped up the sketch portion, I didn't put a grid down, and I have little ways I measure things. So if you guys are more interested in that, let me know. It's a lot sometimes for me to do all the things that people request, but I'm trying. So let me know if you'd like a little bit more detail as to sketching tips and reproducing an image, basically sketching it out. You see how now we're already getting a little bit happening here with the blue of that water, and also too the colors that you're seeing, those brownish and yellow tones, those are the colors that are obviously in the duck. Things that are above the water are going to get reflected below the water with colors and values. But also I noticed some of the same colors. I wanted to have that congruency or harmony. I have some of the same colors reflected in the background part of the water as well. And I'm really just looking at the reference photo and analyzing it and making it a bit more harmonious with color. We don't want things too disjointed or segmented. This was a nice little neutral beigey color, and I threw that in. We know that the blue from the water is coming from what? Why would that water look blue? Well, the sky above it. We also know it looks like in the reference image there's some trees and things around this ducky to where they're getting reflected into the water as well. So we're just using logic, reasoning, and reproducing what we see, basically. You can most likely see that if you look at the little reference image down there, that the water on the outer edges where I'm putting all the blue, it's not really the blue that I'm putting down, but I know this is just going to be my initial layer. I'm going to blend things in a way to neutralize them. I actually had some videos in one of our assignments on our Patreon page about how to create your own neutral colors, and often we can make our own neutral by combining colors, and that's exactly what I'm going to do in this water by combining a few colors, but I still have to block it in. You've got to get that initial color and value in, and then you can work with it and actually really create more colors with pastels than people think. They always say you can't blend pastels, well, you can't do it like you can watercolor and oil, but you can create new color illusions by the colors that you lay down. Now you can see I'm starting to darken in some of these background little bands of color and value. I know they're going to be darker. You can see it in the water, they're darker. But I know already I don't want them to have so much darkness that they're going to compete with my focal point, which is what? Of course it's the duck, but what's the main focal point? His little face, his little beak, his little eye. That's where I'm going to have the most contrast and the most detail. So here you will see me just continuing to not rush this and just really try to reproduce this background like I see it in the reference image. And in about a minute you will see my technique that I use to subdue this background. Look at the reference image. The water is very fluid, obviously it's water, but it's so soft. And the duck is what has you can even see a little bit of texture in his little down, I guess you would call it. He doesn't have total feathers yet, and it's just a different texture than the water. So I'm just laying in the color and the value, and what you'll see me do in a minute is a technique I've been talking about in my past few videos. Many artists have different things they use to blend with, and I often say I don't like to blend later in a painting, but I will initially blend some things to soften it. And I'm going to use what I've been using, what I was trying to say, I'll finally get to it, is my little chamois cloth technique. The little chamois cloth that people use to dry their cars, dry their dishes, whatever. You could use, I've used paper towels before, and they work okay too, but for some reason this little chamois cloth works really good. And I'm just going to soften up some of that texture of that water and make it look a little bit more fluid, a little bit more like water. And I missed a little bit of my footage at the initial part of the blending of the water, but you'll see me do it enough to where you'll see how I actually do this. All right, here you can see I've got my chamois cloth. Well, what I'm doing now is what I just did. I'm sorry for that little lapsed bit of footage there. I just softly blended the water with the chamois cloth. I'm careful not to contaminate colors, and later I sort of soften the edges between the colors, but initially I just want to blend in that blue of that water Also, you couldn't see it here, but I took a little break. If you're working flat like I am, I don't often work flat, but if you do, occasionally you want to pick up your painting, take it outside or somewhere or over a trash can, knock the back of it, knock some of that pastel off if you get an abundance or a buildup of pastel. Let me talk a little bit about this reflection. What's happening with this little ducky, when you see the reference image, you can see it's not an exact mirror image of the duck. Often we talk about reflections are a mirror. What's above is going to be below. But if you have the element of flowing water or a ripple in the water, it's going to distort the reflection. That's why the duck almost looks like he has two bills or three bills in a way. And so instead of going against what was really happening in the water, I wanted to recreate what was actually there, and I thought it would be more believable. So there are some instances where we can use impressionism to, I don't know, kind of improvise things, but there's sometimes, as in this case, I wanted a really more of a duck that was a bit more realistic and a little bit more of a focal point for the duck. So I wanted to keep things a little bit more accurate, which actually is a bit more of a challenge on unsanded paper because we cannot get all the layering. But once again, to me, it proves the point that you can do a lot more with unsanded paper than a lot of times we think. I got really frustrated with unsanded paper when I was first starting out. And like I said before, I think it's because I was trying to correct things too much. And as you get better as artist, you are more confident with your strokes. You're also more light-handed, softer touch, gentle touch, and that really does make a difference. If you go too heavy-handed with this unsanded paper, you're truly going to run out of layering ability, and you're going to create a surface that becomes muddy and becomes kind of slick in its texture. You can't even get anything else down, and that gets quite frustrating. So a light touch and take your time. Now you can see I'm using a purple here. I'm using the purple, like I mentioned before, as a blending tool. I've already used my little chamois cloth to blend, but pastels become their own blending tools when you get a little bit of layering down. Again, with unsanded paper, you don't have the room to get too much layering down, but if you're keeping your pressure super light, you can use it to layer. And I know I want to soften this water, so that's what I'm doing right now with this lavender pastel. Didn't that lavender just add a little bit of character to that water? Okay, so I am honestly getting a bit tired. It's kind of late at night when I'm making this right now. I've had a few little audio problems, but I want you to take note. I'm going to add some music, but I want you to take note. I'm going to move on to the actual duck. So far I've just been working on the water and the reflection, which I'll develop a little further. But I will be choosing some colors for the duck. And you'll notice that the colors that I use, I will focus more on brighter colors around the head and the beak, and not so bright in other areas. It'll get more neutral, more subdued. And also too, you're going to see me introduce another little blending tool that I like, other than the chamois cloth. It's going to be a Q-tip, like you clean your ears with. So I find that these Q-tips work good in little small areas, and so I will use it to just gently blend in some areas of the duck's face. What happens, I think, is when you use these little strategies of blending, whether it's the chamois cloth or the duck's face, when we're using unsanded paper, we're actually blending it, and there's a multi-purpose happening here, kind of knocking off a little of the pastel. So that's why I said if you're working flat, lift your paper up every so often, knock it off somewhere, and you're regaining a little bit of layering ability. So when you blend, it's the same thing I mentioned in the last tutorial I uploaded, where some people were saying, oh my gosh, when I blend, there's so much pastel that falls off. Well, it does. It falls off. You're blending it. It's going to fall off. But with these unsanded papers and with sanded papers, you're giving yourself a little bit more room to layer something else. So here I go with the little bit of a more bright orange around the face. I know these colors are probably going to be a little brighter than they will be eventually, But once again, as you see with the water, I'm going to be able to lightly blend them and neutralize them with another little layer over top. And see how textured it looks, like the water did at first? So that's going to be softened up a little bit with the blending too. So here I go with this neutral green. It's almost the same value as the color of the paper, which is gray. So you almost can't see it when I lay it down like right there. But you see how it just softened up that orange a little bit. So I'm often using other pastels to neutralize and to change the color a little bit, and that absolutely can be done with pastels. So just examine this, enjoy it, follow along, and I'll be back at the end to talk more about part 2, and I will hopefully have that coming real soon. All right, so we're getting close to the end of part one, and I'm trying, you guys, just so you know, to give a little bit of footage where I'm zooming in and you can see what I'm doing more carefully. I know sometimes my hand gets in the way, and this doesn't matter if you're right-handed or left-handed. You just sometimes can't see what the artist is doing because of your hand. And I'm also trying to give footage occasionally where I'm zoomed out a bit and showing you more of my pastels. So I hope this strategy is working, and let me know if maybe you guys would prefer to see it zoomed in the whole time and not necessarily see the pastels on the side, or if this technique works. So just let me know. All right, so I am just working in some detail around the eye. Now, just so you know, even though you can't see exactly what I'm doing here, my hand will move in a minute, getting this eye anatomically correct is important. All right, the duck in general is important. And that's why I decided to actually use some pastel pencils. I think I just end up using one of these. One's a charcoal, that's what it was. And this is a really dark purple pastel pencil. I love this pencil sharpener. And what is the name of it? It was suggested by one of the patrons here in our Patreon group, Enrico, and it works great. So I'll be sure to share a link to that product and the pastel pencils in the description of this video as well. All right, guys, I'm excited to bring you part 2 to this, and I'm not quite sure, I haven't analyzed whether there'll be 2 parts or 3 parts. I can't remember how much longer it took to paint this. So I hope you enjoyed this. I always like to stress how grateful I am for your Patreon support. Thank you so much, artists, and happy ducky painting.